I am the descendant of Graybeard. Graybeard was a chief of our Cheyenne people. He chose to come to Darlington. And it was at Darlington that he was shackled and he was sent to Fort Marion. En route to Fort Marion in Baldwin, Florida, he escaped on the train. He escaped the train because he wanted to be with his people. And it was at that time when he was shot in the back, and he was buried near the railroad tracks in Baldwin, Florida. His honor. And I want to talk a little bit about Darlington. It was mentioned today. We have a, Darlington. I'm going to give a brief overview, pre and post Fort Marion experience. Next slide, please. I'll just read a few highlights. Darlington Agency, where we're at, sits on about 3 acres of land. It was an Indian agency of the Cheyenne Arapaho Reservation prior to statehood in present-day Canadian County. The agency was established in 1870. The agency at Fort Supply was moved to a more accessible location for the tribes. Brenton Darlington, a Quaker for whom the agency was named, was the first United States Indian agent at the agency, a position that he held until his death in 1872. The agency gained a post office and an Indian school. John Homer Seeger ran the school. Darlington became a stop along the Chisholm Trail. By 1880, the agency had its own newspaper, the Cheyenne Transporter. It was Western Indian Territory. The agency left in 1897 to form, the Cheyenne left in 1897 to form their own agency at Concho. When the Arapaho reunited with them, they both occupied the agency. The Darlington Agency became the property of the state of Oklahoma after it was admitted to the Union. Masons leased it until 1922. The state briefly used the site as a drug rehabilitation center before it designated it for the Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation main bird hatchery and research station. The site was added to the National Register of Historic Places on August 14th, 1973. Next slide. Okay, there you are. Okay, stay there. I'll talk a little bit about Camp Supply. November 18th, 1868. The established as Camp Supply for the winter campaign against the Southern Plains Indians. In November 27th, 1868, from the post, Lieutenant Colonel George A. Armstrong led the 7th Cavalry south to the Washita River and destroyed the village of Cheyenne, Cheyenne about that yesterday. President Grant's peace policy marked a profound change in Indian-white relations after the Battle of Washita. with captive Indian chiefs returned to Camp Supply at the close of the campaign in March 1869. Camp Supply was a temporary seat of the Indian Agency in 1889 and early 1870. Next slide, please. Um, as I mentioned earlier, President Grant's peace treaty, um, the key elements, the reservation system, concentrating Native Americans on designated reservations. Um, and as religious involvement, um, the peace policy felt that placing reservations under the control of different Christian denominations like Quakers, Methodists, and Presbyterians, who were expected to manage the reservation. Um, Another element was the removal of corrupt agents, replacing government officials overseeing reservations with supposedly more ethical Christian missionaries. Some criticisms of the peace policy: forced assimilation, assimilate Native Americans into white culture, often undermining their traditions and languages. It also was ineffective implementation, corruption within the Indian Bureau, and conflicts between different missionary groups hindered the policy's success. Um, and Despite the reservation system, Native Americans continued to um, lose their land due to Western expansion. Next slide, please. Okay. All right. Fort Supply and Britton Darlington. Britton Darlington was a Quaker through his membership in the Society of Friends, and he was appointed the Indian agent of the Upper Arkansas Agency. Location of it to establish the agency complex. He had strong convictions in the scriptures of faith that caused him to adhere to the principles of the peace policy. He refused to accept a military escort when he came into Indian territory because I read that he said that Jesus Christ would never raise arms, and that's why he refused to accept a military escort. Next slide, please. In 1869, the Cheyenne Arapaho Indian Agency at Camp Supply was moved to a more accessible location. After his appointment, Agent Darlington selected a site on Pond Creek to be the new reservation. The Indians were moved to this site, where one building was erected, were broken because of bad relations between the Cheyenne Arapahoes on one side and the Osages and Kaws on the other. In the spring of 1870, Britton Darlington received instructions from the Commissioner of Indian Affairs in Washington to select a new site for the agency in the vicinity of the intersection between and the North Canadian River. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, I'll just go on. The Darlington agency work was challenging for the Darlington as he was responsible for issuing the treaty guaranteed annuities of goods and regular food rations. Many of the range near the western border of present-day Oklahoma, So the number of Cheyenne Arapahoes living near the agency was small during Darlington's 3 years as an agent here at Darlington. His open coffin while paying their last respect. During the funeral, a Cheyenne chief spoke about the loss of a great man to the assembled group of the Cheyenne Arapaho members. This agency, as I mentioned earlier, had a post office which was established in 1873. It had an Indian school that was established for and it was ran by John Seeger. It was at this school where many Cheyenne Arapaho children in the 1870s began their formal education. Darlington became on the Chisholm Trail. In 1880, it had its own newspaper. And say Galpin, Darlington agency, his was largely favorable to the Post. He seemed especially impressed by the Indian schools established there, writing that it was the largest and in many respects, it had an enrollment of 115 students. The chief clerk noted that the school was in excellent condition and that the furniture, without a scratch, made wantonly. Okay, next slide, please. I talked earlier about the newspaper, the Cheyenne Transporter. It ran from 1870 to 1886. The rep in 1879, the Reverend Alfred Brown, superintendent of the to purchase a magic lantern. With extra money that they earned, Seeger acquired a small printing press. With Reverend Brown as a Cheyenne Transporter was launched in the interest of Indian civilization and progress. The Cheyenne Transporter was published at Darlington. You can go to the next slide if you want. The publication was suspended due to in 1886. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is the next slide is of the Indian Agency in the 1890s that had the Indian camps. In Fort Reno, across the river, was connected to Washington. It was established as a military post, as it was mentioned earlier. You know, a lot of the activities went hand in hand with each other, and it's amazing how everything is connected. You know, everything that we're talking about with Fort Marion, it was connected from Ouachita, connected here at Darlington, Fort Marion, and back to Darlington at the close of the school, at the close of the prison. And that's all I have to report. Thank you for your time.
Okay, at this time, we're going to go into our portion. And right now, I'm going to ask Gordon Yellowman to come on up, and he's going to speak a little bit and do a short introduction, and then we're going to go into the families that are here. Those that are here after Rebecca, she's going to do a story also. So we're going to go into the sharing portion. So here's Gordon.
Thank you, Noreen. Appreciate this opportunity to introduce our next speaker. You know, when we talk about Fort Marion, we talk about the descendants. And the story that has to be included in this narrative is Okahater. And he later became David, Okahater Pendleton. Pendleton was his name. And he's buried at the Watauga Indian Cemetery, which is owned by the Indian Baptist Church. We went out there last night to pay respects to his grave. But we also went to the Whirlwind Mission, where he established a day school after coming from Fort Marion. And starting the school for our children. His story is really who eventually became a saint. Narrative story tells the parallels of the Episcopal Church and the priest. When he saw how they worshiped, he took that to heart because he said, they're purifying themselves the same way. They're using fire, they're using coals. So he recognized that, and that's took the transition of applying Cheyenne way of ceremonial life into the Episcopalian church, because that's what he believed. And so for me, I always feel honored to not only be a member of the community of Watauga, but the history of all of the chiefs that were in that cemetery yesterday. We have a tremendous history, and Fort Marion is just a part of that history. Chiefs were involved. You know, we talked about Black Horse this morning when he was shackled here. That name eventually became Night Horse, the translation of that name. And we have a leader that's Cheyenne. He continued that name when it got transitioned in the Cheyenne word of Black Horse. And that's Ben Night Horse Campbell. And that's the name Night Horse. So these stories of our names are very, very rich in history. They're connected to the Fort Marion, and it all started here when they were taken as prisoners, captives, as Max refers them to. And so at this time, I want to introduce Pat. She's our pastor or the deacon of the Whirlwind Mission Church that was established in Watauga. But I also wanted to mention the staff, Eagle staff behind me. I thank George Woods for making it possible that the Chiefs have a staff. We never had one. And we felt like we needed one to represent the Chiefs of the past, the present, and the future. And so I thank George Woods for making this staff 44 eagle feathers on it because it represents the council of 44. And you see the eagle head on the top. And that is the bald eagle, which is a symbol of our great nation. So you think about that. Symbolism is very powerful in the things we do with our traditions. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Pat and then come forward, and she could tell you more about what she does and how her connection is with Fort Marion and Okahater. So let's welcome Pat.
My name is Reverend Pat Gonzalez. I am a deacon at the Whirlwind Mission of the Holy Family. I chose to attend theological and studied upon my return from being a full-time nurse. I chose to do this and continue David Pendleton's ministry with the community in the Watauga area because my late husband, Junior Starr, had carried on his ministry on before his passing. My husband's grandmother, French Good Bear, Tall Bear, also known by her Indian Standing 20. Today, I want to tell you about David Pendleton's life within the Episcopal Church, what brought him to his calling, which began with him at Fort Marion, held as a captive. The Episcopal Church has kept and recorded firsthand testimonial documentation from God's warrior is an epithet by which David Pendleton Okahater is known among the Cheyenne Indians of Oklahoma. The title is apt one for his apostle of Christ to the Cheyenne, originally a government with warriors, other tribes, in the disputes over Indian rights. By the late 1860s, Okahater had disguised himself for bravery, leadership as an officer in the elite corps of Cheyenne fighters. In 1875, after a year of minor uprising and major violence, he and 27 other warrior leaders were taken prisoner by the U.S. Army, charged with insane rebellion in military prison in Florida. Under influence of a concerned Army captain who sought to educate the prisoners, Okahater and his companions learned English, gave art and archery lessons to the area's many visitors, and first encounter with a Christian faith to life and finite Mrs. Pendleton of Cincinnati. He and 3 other prisoners went north to study for the ministry. At his baptism in Syracuse in 1878, he took the name David Pendleton Okahater in honor of his mistress. Soon after his ordination to the diaconate in 1881, David returned to Oklahoma. He was instrumental in founding and operating schools and missions through great personal sacrifice and often in the face of apathy from hierarchy and resistance from the government. He continued his way before he could do anything like that. But I carry get on and hope that our Cheyenne Arapaho people will continue. You know, they don't have to be Episcopalians. They can be any religion they want.
I'm the direct descendant of Chief Heap of Birds. Through my grandmother, Helen. I am the direct descendant of Big Moxon. Through my grandfather, Moses Star Senior. Rebecca, are you ready?
Proud of my name, but I was telling Noreen the story last year. Some of the other warriors that were getting ready to be shipped to Fort Marion. Just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Um, she kept telling
We're all relatives, but this is my grandma's family. Heap of birds. This is my brother, Kinsley. Our parents, Alfred heap of birds, and Joyce standing water. We made several trips to Fort Marion while we were growing up. My dad was going down there to visit with the caretakers to find his great great his grandfather, Emmons Hos, who was taken the moat that surrounded Fort Marion. Prisoner was all tribes who were there. Were just thrown into those graves and covered up. And they were trying to find the names of all these prisoners in each of the Comanche Bay. My dad thinks that Mo'emon's Hahos was strung there, but there were birds, a big bird, big flock of birds. But when they were enrolling him, as they were enrolling all the, and it's been carried, heap of birds has been brought down to us. Each little name out to if anything that it was the son who carried it on, even though the son was young when Moisés went to Marion. And that has been carried on through little black wolf Alfred sang, and he married a lady, a woman named, he composed songs, and they had 6 or 7 children. Most of them died babies. I don't think they made it through their first year. But their names were John, Homer, Ruth, Esther, Alistair, Guy, Ellen, Helen, Sarah, and Alwoman. When we went to visit my grandpa, we met and knew and grew up with Ruth, Esther, I has made a lot of songs, and he never took to them. He put on the drum. Teaching to us was it belongs to the drum, and if someone wants to sing it, they should. We hear his songs all over Oklahoma, and I know those people that are singing those songs don't know who made it, but we do, and that's what counts to me. My dad, John, married Nora Antelope, and that's where John and Nora had 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son. 2 of the daughters didn't make it, but the 3 that were left were Rachel and Alfred. And my dad passed on these stories about Fort Marion. We went to visit Fort Marion many times. It was an emotional experience for me. The first time we went,
my dad sat down and he was trying to get that caretaker to warm up and to be sociable. And I went off by myself. I was exploring inside. And when I got down into the bowels of the castle, I was in despair. And I could feel the lonely heartache that happened. Dad came after me. He came down and he had some last year because I sure would have liked to have gone, but I didn't have any idea. But I really appreciate Will share the story that us and really
what I had learned from my grandfather John. Most of the time he told me stories, but this is one story that stuck to me. Before the English version, the Cheyenne heap of birds was really plenty of birds. When it's translated English, heap of birds came involved. As I went, are not for me, they're for the people. And he made a lot of the songs that my father learned. I'm sorry to get too Hartley. We're with them, I believe. My grandpa was the same way. It was hard to understand why making these songs. Like now, today, when I look back, reason that I have no idea. But if I could ever find that there was records he had made, records, I could acquire them and bring them back to the past. So this is one of the reasons why my grandfather added a lot to our people, John. And yet he made us aware of how our Cheyenne people were tremendous among other tribes about our songs. And that's what he was trying to do. These songs are not for just us, they're for the people. The Cheyenne, I feel like once I get a hold of these, I would like to share them. Thank you for listening to me. my sister.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Do we have any other descendants or anyone that would like to say anything or get up and speak? We have a few more minutes. And it was three, and she's here today. Juanita, thank you, and thank you for bringing Mia. I have two 7th-generation grandchildren that are here, Miama and Abby, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Thank you, guys. I forgot. Okay. Anybody else? I'm going to go ahead and let Larry come up and speak for a few minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and go eat.
Last but not least, I just want to say I really appreciate asking me to come over and say the prayer. You know, it's always an honor to say prayers, especially for our peoples, our relations. And I wanted to just send it from Romanos. My brother was in here a while ago, Malvin. I don't know if he's still here. Yeah, we're and then Chris Romanos. He's travel workers, takes pictures all over for our tribes, and then Perry Romanos, Quentin Romanos, direct descendants of Wakani, the lead warrior in the dog soldiers. He was one of the prisoners that went to Fort Marion. Descendants also with Noreen, you know, recognized our descendants. So that's really good. And I always like to mention that we were in the first place, and you know, when we came to the area, like in the or 18, yeah, somewhere. When we came to this area, when we agreed, also, you know, our whole Cheyenne tribe, Dog Knife, the Northern Cheyenne, to our prophet, Ezekiel, sweet medicine. He prophesied all what was going to be going on today. We're going to do different different. He said he was telling this prophecy all came all the way. You do my renewal ceremonies every year. You always beat the system. So we're trying to hold on. I believe in the state of Oklahoma that has our ancient ceremony still. The renewal earth ceremony, the Mahuts and the Sundance. Our people from our language, what we're taught. And so that's why I mentioned we were, we had these two covenants. And our Northern Cheyenne brothers, you know, they were here, they left, and the cavalry chased the skirmish at Turkey Springs skirmish right by the state line. One of the other week, the last month or a few weeks ago, they established a monument, national monument at Turkey Springs skirmish. That Cheyenne, Northern Cheyenne went up that way. Anyway, the cavalry chased them, and they caught them, confined them at Nebraska fort, but they escaped and made it on to the Black Hills, to Montana, and the U.S. government, you know, they couldn't control them because that was our country, that was our land. Knew how to maneuver. A lot of our warriors, even our dog soldiers, they weren't defeated, even though historians say, you know, they were defeated, but they weren't. They left, some of them, but some of them stayed, like our prisoners, our grandfathers, Romanos. Anyway, they made it up there and they established the reservation, the government, the northern Lame Deer, Montana, our northern relatives. And then I wanted to mention those things. This red and blue blanket that I'm wearing, you know, it's got a history. And I was telling Ross last night, we had a luncheon. I was really glad to meet these historians from San Diego, and let's see, where's the other place? I can't remember right off. Where? Florida. Yeah, excuse me. Our main topic location. But I haven't been to Fort Marion yet, but I want to go someday, where our grandfathers were incarcerated and became prominent people, came back to our reservation. And our grandfather, he said the things that I read about him that's documented, he learned to read and write and became a chief. And he was telling our people, he said, if you want to survive, send your kids to school. So that's how we're going to survive. And he became a member of the Baptist Church. And, you know, we got a project going on right now in the Watonga area. And, you know, I always like to mention that our tribe was organized. We had our societies, our warrior societies, our chief society. They had ways, had traditions how to do things. When we settled in this area, this 9-county area, windowed down to 9 counties, our people were assigned to different areas, like the Watonga area. Noreen and her group came over and visited the grave site where there were many warriors that were buried there. And one of our projects is we want to make that cemetery the National Historic Site. and we're working on that. And anyway, the warriors, they had a lot of traditions they had to follow, or they did follow. And today we're trying to hold on to some of those traditions, like the red and blue blanket. Um, I'm featured in the First American Museum with a small video talking about our warriors, the things that was told to me, the things that I read about, and the red and blue blanket was it was a symbol of celebration for our people when they went to battle, like the little bighorn. They were victorious, our Cheyenne tribe, and somebody mentioned there were the Utes. There was a warrior that was with our tribe. His name was Yellow Nose. When they had the Battle of the Little Bighorn, he captured the U.S. flag. He took it. They say he even killed Custer. He took it back to our Cheyenne encampment and flew it, the U.S. flag. So that flag, my elders told me, that flag belongs to the Cheyennes. And we have a lot of veterans, and I always we have flags on, Cheyenne flags on. I always feel real honored when I hear that song. And also my son was in the service too. And Noreen, some of us were in the service, we're veterans. So we represented, the service way of life, our people, our traditions. And I wanna mention, a lot of these traditional people, these are priests. They have this knowledge that was handed down to them, and they handed it down to us, and we try to hold on to it with our language and our ways, our ceremonies. And we believe that our ancestors are in the spirit world, and they're over there in the spirit world, and we try to recognize them still when we have like these ceremonies, ancient ceremonies. We do offerings, and I always like to suggest, like when we have a meal, we do a food offering too. Our chiefs do that whenever we meet in our societies. We have a food, because we recognize those spirits. So I just wanted to mention that when we have food, we could have somebody do that. So this red and blue blanket. The story was our warriors took it off an officer, a cavalry officer, where his cape was blue on the outside, red on the inside, and it was captured. These capes were captured and taken back to the tribe, and they made red and blue blankets out of them. So it's a celebration thing. The gourd dance, we have it today's time at the powwows. The Cheyennes, they're the ones that started the gourd dance. So I just wanted to mention that to you. Our societies, our Tsistis, Hadawa, all our warriors, they wear the red and blue blanket, when they have activities. So I thank you for listening to me. I didn't want to talk too long. God bless you all. Naish.
Thank you so much, so much. So many beautiful, wonderful words, so many heartfelt stories, so much stuff that we are just blessed to be here. All these people, these chiefs, these veterans, these ministers, we've got people from all walks of life in here. We are so grateful, and I'm so blessed to be here and to have been a part of this. Does anybody else need to say anything? This is your time. Right now is your time to correct anything that needs to be corrected. We can't change history. We can't change what we've done up until this moment, but we can correct it. So now is the time. If anybody wants to say something, you are more than welcome to come. Okay, we're going to go ahead and conclude this morning's program, and we're going to head up to the ERC, and we will see you up there in a few minutes, and I hope you're hungry. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention. Now, huh? You might.